What's going on, everyone? Today is January 27th of 2023. My name is Derek, and welcome back to this, the 46th edition of the Super Stream. So what's going on, everyone? It's been about a month since I've done one of these Super Streams. As you may have noticed on this channel, I've tried to shift my focus a little bit lately, trying to do a few more of the artistic style videos that so many people have given really good feedback on. So if you check my channel out, of course, there's now a split between live streams and normal uploads. So recently I've been doing some videos with a little more attention to detail and editing. And that's, of course, in addition to the live streams that I've been doing as well. I've done 4 of them since my last Super Stream. So this was a change that YouTube implemented last month, and it took a lot of people to catch on to the fact that not all my videos were deleted. But yeah, there you have it. So in today's video, we're going to take a look back at some of the bigger news stories from the month of January here. Some special ones of note. We're going to start out with this mass shooting in Half Moon Bay. Now, this was an event that occurred in California about a day after the Monterey Park shooting. So I want to look at a couple more things about the Monterey Park shooting before we get into that story. We'll do that first. We had the year's first big plane crash in Nepal back on January 15th. Want to talk about the numerology of that and how it connects to Donald Trump and Howard Hughes. Someone else who's been in the news a lot lately is actor Jeremy Renner, who reportedly had a snowplow accident at his home that almost claimed his life, breaking about 30 bones in the process, but we'll see some very intriguing numerology there. I'm going to have an intermission at some point, just in case I need a little break, and I want to talk about a couple of other channels on YouTube and give proper shoutouts. And then, of course, the death by the numbers part. Several people passing away over the last few weeks. We're also going to look at a wrestling death from 2003 in light of the fact that former Ring of Honor star Jay Briscoe passed away in a car crash at 38. And then a little added extra time at the end. And I've been getting this question a lot lately again about what I think is really going on with numerology. And, you know, I like to think that by going so deep with the numbers and bringing astrology into the foray, that my take on numerology, I'm trying to make it obvious through other fashions, but it really deserves me to take some time and talk about these things and what's really going on in the world. So we'll get to that. But first, the reason you came here, the numbers. So once again, my last live stream was on this Monterey Park, California mass shooting, where we're told that 10 people were killed and another 10 were injured. Well, shortly after I made that video, we learned the name of the shooter. And he was 72 years old, which is pretty uncommon for a mass shooting. Usually these are people in their early 20s that we typically get, you know, the ones who are filled with all this angst. It's pretty uncommon to get an elderly man as the suspect in a mass murder. However, just a day later, we found out about this Half Moon Bay mass shooting, and there, the gunman is said to be 66 years old. So back-to-back days, we get elder gunmans. Now, this was reported to be 67 on the day of the shooting. Now, it looks like they've changed it to 66, but we'll look at why they were reporting 67 on the day of the event. In my live stream, I explained how this entire event was a tribute to the numerology of Revelation and the number of the beast. And what are the odds that the name of the shooter is a super match with the word Revelation? Of course, the odds are roughly less than 1%. Actually, a lot less than that when you consider the super match. So 10 killed, 10 injured, Revelation equals 10-10. And then Revelation in the rest of these methods syncs up with who can Tran? I don't know. Can you Tran? I certainly can't. Notice the 673 value in Latin. This is the 122nd prime number, and think about the date that this shooting was in the news. January 22nd, 122. So the name, as always, comes out after the fact, and what do you know? Syncs up perfectly with everything I had pointed out in my previous video. So after a mass shooting at a Lunar New Year festival, then we get a mass shooting in a city called Half Moon Bay. I think it's clear to see what's going on here. Events connected to the moon. And here we are in the year 2023, a massive moon year, as we'll continue to explore throughout this video. In this case, the shooting was on January 23rd. And think about how this date is written internationally, 23/1. The number 231 is what we call a triangular number. Add up every number 1 through 21, and you arrive at a sum of 231. The number 21 is the reduction value of moon. The reduction or Pythagorean method, as seen on the lower left part of your screen. This cipher takes the standard 26-letter alphabetic order and reduces each double-digit number to a single digit by adding the digits together until you arrive at a single digit. And in this rudimentary cipher, moon equals 21. So does the word lunar. Lunar is also 21. 21 squared is 441. Notice how this New Year's shooting at the Lunar Festival occurred 441 days before the next Great American Total Solar Eclipse. It was also 1 year, 1 month, and 20 days after the last total eclipse. So what we're looking at here are the next and last total eclipses to have occurred. Notice how Half Moon Bay sums to 112 in ordinal, syncing up with this measurement here. Reports say that police first responded at 2:22 p.m. in this incident. 2:22 p.m. Using reverse Sumerian Gematria, a cipher which multiplies the alphabetic order by 6, Half Moon Bay, California sums to 2202. Now, as I mentioned, they previously reported that this shooter was 67 years old. Not only did this shooting fall on a date with 67 numerology, but Half Moon Bay, California gives us a 607 using prime numbers. And they even told us that his name was Chun-Li Zhao. And check out how Chun-Li sums to 67 in the standard alphabetic order. The number 67, found in total solar eclipse, human sacrifice, and blood sacrifice, explaining this eclipse connection a little stronger. Speaking of eclipses, we are, of course, in this magnificent period of time between the two Great American Total Solar Eclipses. So this 2024 eclipse is the next total eclipse on the planet. Back in 2017, we had the first of these two Great American Eclipses, and if you measure from the first one on August 21st, 2017, to the date of this Half Moon Bay shooting, we get exactly 283 weeks. This was a number I mentioned in my last video, as the other shooting was a span of 283 weeks after the same eclipse. This is the Latin value of the moon. Latin Gematria, also known as Agrippa's Key as introduced in old Masonic texts, is what I consider to be the most significant cipher in Gematria, and strangely enough, it's also the only one I tend to talk about that's not based in the standard classic 26-letter alphabetic order. But once you crack this cipher open and start paying attention, you find some pretty amazing things. And I've been talking about this for years, the moon, 283, connecting to the number 666, which is 2083, the 314th prime number, like the first 3 digits of pi. The moon, the largest circle we can see in the sky, up there with the sun. So this coding runs deep. That's not what this part of the video is all about, though. What's so curious about this event in Half Moon Bay is that it started at a place called Magic Mushroom Farm. So this is what we're doing now. We're going to groweries and massacring people, I suppose. Okay, formerly named Mountain Mushroom Farm, but now it's Magic Mushroom Farm, and one must wonder why they changed the name. Notice how the word magic sums to 283 in the Fibonacci method. The Fibonacci method, a cipher that uses the first 13 Fibonacci numbers. We don't go all the way up to 26 here because it becomes impractical at some point with the numbers getting way too large. But notice magic gives us a 283. Now, if you were to Google the shooter's name, Chun-Li, looking for Chun-Li Zhao, most of the results we get connect to this Street Fighter character named Chun-Li. Now, if you're around my age, I'm 37 now, Street Fighter 2 was one of the biggest things in the arcades growing up. You know, when this game came out, it really created the fighting game genre as a legitimate game. And Chun-Li has the distinction of being really the first popular female character in a fighting game. And believe it or not, this shooting in Half Moon Bay seems to be synced up to Chun-Li, as the shooter's name is this exact same letters. Back in 1994, Street Fighter became a movie. It was one of these first video games to be adapted to film. I never actually saw this film. I heard it was pretty awful. But hey, you can make a shitty movie and still make a lot of money, apparently. Anyway, if you measure from the release date of this film to the date of the shooting at the Lunar New Year Festival, you get 28 years and 30 days, syncing up with the 283 that connects us to the eclipse. Furthermore, if you measure to the next date, which was the date of the shooting in Half Moon Bay, notice how you get exactly 337 months. That stands out because measuring between the two shootings, one at the Lunar New Year Festival near Los Angeles, to the shooting in Half Moon Bay, you get 337 miles. And this all occurring 337 months after the release of Street Fighter. Now, how do we know this isn't a coincidence? Well, the number 337 is a prime number, divisible only by 1 and itself. Notice here, it's the 68th prime number. Using the Latin cipher, Half Moon Bay, the name of the city, sums to 608. In numerology, the result of these phrases, the 0 gets dropped. So this represents the number 68 for all intents and purposes. Now, here's another reason they probably recently changed this place to Magic Mushroom Farm. First off, notice the release date of this old Street Fighter movie, December 23rd, or 12/23. 12/23 contains the digits 223. Here we are, a couple big mass shootings in the first month of 2023. And look at Magic Mushroom in reverse standard Gematria. On the right of the side of the screen, you see the standard cipher. This uses the current 26-letter alphabetic order. For reverse standard, all we do is flip the alphabet backwards like we do with the standard reverse ciphers. And using this method, Magic Mushroom equals 2023, the current year. Remember, in Hebrew Gematria, the moon has a value of 223. And I thought it was interesting that the mayor of Half Moon Bay is named Robert Brownstone, whose name sums to 223 in the alphabetic order. If you write the name of this farm out in ordinal, Magic Mushroom Farm, again, where this shooting all began, we get a value of 193. And the first reason that stood out is because if you measure from the incorporation date of Half Moon Bay, July 15th, to the date of the shooting there, you get 193 days. 193. Talk about this number a lot. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Oh, no, it's just John F. Kennedy in reverse. I had it. 193. 193 is the 44th prime number. Kennedy won the 44th presidential election. Well, the suspect was, intriguingly enough, arrested at 4:40 p.m. And I guess he showed up at the police conference where they were talking about the incident, which is especially bizarre. But there you see the 44, and this is a number we commonly see in rituals with death and killing. Kill equals 44. So does shooting, gunfire, execution, military. And then I got this headline where we're told that this was the third mass shooting in California in 44 hours. Finally, the word magic on its own. Again, the magic mushroom farm. Notice how magic gives us a 33. And this is a number we commonly see into mass shootings. 33, the number of masonry, where the 33rd degree is said to be the highest. An organization steeped in secrecy. The number 33 matches ritual human sacrifice, and notice how this is the same value that Magic Mushroom Farm yields in standard, 895. Also the same digits as Half Moon Bay, 958. So, just another day, just another call from lawmakers to restrict our Second Amendment rights. Fortunately for us, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, at least not on the level they would wish anytime soon, but it's important to stay vigilant, let people know what's happening and what the goals of this elite truly are to those around you, as it feels like now is perhaps one of the best times to wake up in recent history. For the next story, we have our first major plane crash of 2023. On January 15th, Flight 691, an ATR 72-500 carrying 72 people, crashed as it was landing at Pokhara Airport in Nepal. Interestingly enough, Pokhara Airport just opened to the public. There was a new Pokhara International Airport that just opened on January 21st. And just 2 weeks after they opened, it's the scene of a major plane crash. Now, in reviewing this, it's important to understand the historical connection of plane crashes to Donald Trump. And I've got links on this in my blog post. But even since before he was born, plane crashes have been coded up alongside Donald Trump. The name Donald, remember, equals 119. It was the big Tisha B'Av ritual on 9/11 that destroyed the two temples. And this is something, again, I've been blogging about for a very long time. Back in 2020, we had a plane that crashed with 176 on board. That's the value of Donald J. Trump, 176. This was while he was still in office. And this was actually a date that Bobby pointed out to me ahead of time. He said, hey, Donald Trump turning 318 mercurial years old on January 15th. And 115 has been a number that's been important to Trump as well. When Donald Trump became the president, he joined with the 115th U.S. Congress, 115. In fact, his presidential campaign lasted for 511 days. And then he won an election that was held on November 8th, which sums to 151. So this 115 number, Masonic equals 115 as well, has always been important to Donald Trump. And this is also appears to be synced up to Howard Hughes, who is one of the aviation industry's most integral figures, as he was the first man who circumnavigated the globe in an aircraft. He's said to have survived something like 4 airplane accidents and crashes, and then did a lot of business with airplanes in his later years. So what I want to focus on here is how this crash in Nepal, where all day it was reported that 68 were dead, even though they knew 72 people were on board and the odds of anyone being found alive were slim to none. All day it was 68 killed, 68 killed, 68. Notice how 68 is the value of both Donald John Trump and Donald J. Trump. Additionally, the name Hughes sums to 68 in the alphabetic order. Measuring between the birthdays of Howard Hughes, Christmas Eve in 1905, to the birthday of Donald Trump on Flag Day in 1946, you get 40 years and 173 days. The word airplane equals 40. The phrase plane crash equals 173. And here we get a plane crash in Nepal. Plane and Nepal, which have the same letters, both summing to 173. If you instead measure from the death of Howard Hughes, April 5th of 76, back to Donald Trump's birthday, you get 10,888 days, and the name Donald J. Trump sums to 888. What I failed to mention in the post is that Howard Hughes was born on April 5th, which is 4/5, like the number 45. Donald Trump was the 45th President of the United States. Howard Hughes died in the year 76. The name Donald John Trump equals 76. So does Donald, with capital letters. But the reason 76 is so important here is because the word airplane sums to 76 in the alphabetic order. In the Latin method, airplane equals 216. And look how old Donald Trump was for this plane crash. 76 years, 216 days old. Howard Hughes was further immortalized in the 2004 motion picture called The Aviator, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, where he portrayed Hughes. Measuring from the release date of this film, which was on Christmas Day, just one day after Hughes' birthday, to the date of the Nepal plane crash was 216 months. The name of the aircraft involved, the ATR-72, sums to 216. The word airplane also equals 151. And think about the date of this airplane crash. The 15th of January, 15/1. This date also falls 151 days before Donald Trump's birthday. However, we're just getting started with the numerology on this. The crash occurred in Pokhara, Gandaki, Nepal. Gandaki, the name of the province there. And I want to point out how this sums to 408 in Latin Gematria. 408, in this instance, represents the number 48. Nepal equals 48 in ordinal, just like the word plane, which again has the exact same letters. In a significant cipher called Satanic Gematria, which you see on the bottom side of your screen, it begins with 36, as the 36th triangular number is 666. Using this method, Nepal and plane both sum to 223. And once again, here's the first big plane crash of the year 2023. The number 223 is also the 48th prime number. So you have this powerful prime number connection right here in this word, Nepal. But why else is the number 223 significant? The name Howard Robard Hughes Jr., his full name, sums to 223 in the alphabetic order. With capital letters, Donald equals 223 in reverse. Again, 223, a massive moon number. Moon also sums to 57, which is the number of degrees in the moon's range of declination. 57 degrees north and south of the plane to the sun. And I point this out because the name Howard Hughes has matching Latin gematria with the number 57. 57 and Howard Hughes both summing to 1361, which is another prime number connected to the moon. 1361, the 218th prime, and in ancient Hebrew, moon equals 218. So on my calculator, for enthusiast and mystic members, there's a planetary calculator as well. And what I wanted to point out is that on this date, January 15th, Donald Trump was exactly 318 mercurial years old. Now, 318 is a significant number to Jesus, and I haven't mentioned it, but there's a lot of Jesus numbers coded in with Trump, which seems laughable, and it is. Just look at the fact that Donald Trump equals 589. Well, what's the reverse of 589? That would be 985, and 985 is the value of Jesus. In Greek isopsephy, Jesus Christ equals 888, like Donald J. Trump. There's a lot more, but consider how in the New Testament, the return of Jesus Christ is mentioned 318 times. The name Hughes in Gematria sums to 318. Now, the reason this is so significant with Mercury in particular is because in ancient mythology, Mercury is the god of travelers and transportation. And here we're talking about a plane crash, a mercurial riddle. Back in 2001, we had the 9/11 attacks. The first plane hit the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. And this all occurred under the sign of Virgo, September 11th, in Virgo. Virgo equals 846. George Floyd was killed during this time of Gemini, which is the other sign ruled by Mercury. Virgo, Gemini, both ruled by Mercury. Speaking of 9/11, remember September 11th, the date of the biggest airplane disaster in U.S. history. The number 911 is the 156th prime number, which makes the fact that in standard gematria the word plane equals 156, makes that pretty interesting. Nepal then, of course, also with the 156. And this was at Pokhara Airport. Pokhara gives us the 119, like how September 11th would be written in most parts of the world. Donald also with that 119. But there's one other major number that deserves attention in this story. The number 22. In the reduction method, the word crash sums to 22. Howard Hughes would have been 22 days after his birthday for this plane crash in Nepal. And in Gematria, the name Hughes equals 22. Measuring from the 9/11 attacks in 2001 to the date of this crash is exactly 22 lunar years. A lunar year is 12 lunations, or new moons. So if you take the number of lunar phases, 264, and divide it by 12, you get 22. Exactly 22 lunar years after 9/11. Speaking of 22, Donald John Trump equals 220, boosted out of office in the 2020 election. The airport where this all happened even opened 202 days after Donald Trump's birthday in the year 22. The 22nd triangular number is 253. And look at Donald Trump's total age on the date of the crash. 25,300 days old. And the airplane that crashed was an ATR-72, which equals 253, connecting back to 22. Notice how the name of the airport sums to 1,085. That matches both Donald John Trump and World Trade Center. The World Trade Center event on 9/11 was kind of a recreation of the destruction of Solomon's Temple, which also was 185. And the whole story of Solomon's Temple is integral to the symbolism of Masonry. In this same Latin cipher, Masonry equals 691. The number of the aircraft, Flight 691. Of course, it's been 691 years since the 1331 eclipse. And if you're curious what I'm talking about with the 1331 eclipse, feel free to check out my recent video on Damar Hamlin, where I explained that to this very day, they are still treating this 1331 eclipse with great reverence. And it seems like this is another nod to that remarkable alignment. For the next story I want to cover, we're going to talk about actor Jeremy Renner, who has had a lot of photos of himself uploaded to social media recently with smiling, happy nurses around him who seem to be a little too happy about the condition he's in. Again, it's said that Renner broke close to 30 bones after being crushed by a snowcat at his home while trying to clear snow back on New Year's Day. Now, I peeked at the numerology earlier, but I figured it really deserved a deeper dive once we got this story from a couple days ago, where now we're told that the reason he was injured is because he's a hero. He was trying to save his nephew from injury. And you gotta wonder, who's watching the nephew? What's he doing climbing up on a snowcat? But that's for another time. What I want to focus on is how this event was very much by the numbers, and how it appears to connect to a 1980 film called The Shining. And I think when you look at the symbolism and numerology, you will agree. First, notice how the word nephew sums to 71 in the alphabetic order. The number 71 is important to Jeremy Renner, who was not only born in the year 71, but also born on the 7th day of the first month, the 7th of January, 7/1. In the United States, January 7th is written as 1/7. Notice how the word snow equals 17 and 71. Just like his birthday, 1/7 of 71. Saving his nephew. If you write out the word plow, it sums to 66, like Jeremy Renner. In reduction, both snowplow and Renner sum to 38 and 34. Now, in the media stories about this event, at least the initial ones, they gave us a picture of the vehicle that was involved in this incident. And the one we're looking at here is on the left. So this is apparently Renner's snowcat. On the right, we see a similar snowcat from the 1980 film The Shining. And it bears a pretty strong resemblance. You have the red cab, the wide treads. Obviously, it's a different model, a little more modern than this other one. Now, hear me out. When the movie The Shining came out back in 1980, it did so 137 days after Jeremy Renner's birthday, from January 7th to May 23rd. 137 is the value of snowplow in the alphabetic order, 137. Standard Gematria also yields 1370, 1370. In Latin Gematria, Jeremy Renner equals 1370, like that 137. Those who are looking to get into numerology should recognize 137 as a very significant prime number, the 33rd prime. When Jeremy Renner was born, lead actor Jack Nicholson was 33 years old. And on the date of the accident, it was exactly 3 months and 3 weeks before Nicholson's birthday. Jack played a character named Jack Torrance in the film. Jeremy Renner has standard birth numerology of 79, 1 plus 7 plus 71. This is the reverse value of snowplow. And when he suffered his injury, it was 7 months and 9 days after the anniversary of The Shining, which again contains a snowplow that looks very similar, even photographed from a similar angle, I suppose. In the film, Nicholson, not the golfer, the actor, he plays a guy named Jack Torrance, which also sums to 79. And notice how Jack Torrance has overlap with Jeremy Lee Renner. The name Jeremy Renner also syncs up with Jack Nicholson's full name. The Shining takes place at a hotel called the Overlook Hotel. which sums to 65. Notice how the 65th prime number shows up in significant measurements. Jack Nicholson was exactly 31,300 days old on New Year's Day when Renner was injured. He was also born 12,313 days before Renner. So that number showed up twice. However, another highly notable name from this film is the director, Stanley Kubrick, who passed away back in the year 1999 at the age of only 70. If you measure from the death of Stanley Kubrick to New Year's Day when Renner suffered his accident, you get 23 years, 300 days. This represents the digits 233. The name Jeremy Lee Renner sums to 233, just like the word shining. Shining also 233. And consider how this was the first day of the year 23. The word shining also sums to 203 in Latin. Now look what happens when you measure from the release of The Shining to the accident. 2,223 weeks. It was also 223 days after the anniversary, and here we are in the year 2023. I don't know, guys. You tell me what happened, because this reminds me of a recent story with Jay Leno being burned in his garage. When I saw that story, I actually believed it. I mean, his injuries look pretty consistent. It'll be interesting to see what shape Renner is in once he leaves the hospital. But we could speculate on what's really happening and what out of the media is real and what's fake. We could speculate on that all day. Next up, I want to touch on a funny news story from the first weekend of playoff football. I wouldn't really call it a news story, but a bit of a mishap on the field when Cowboys kicker Brett Maher failed to kick 4 consecutive extra points. And the Cowboys should have been ahead 28-0 over the Buccaneers, but it was only 24. And when I saw this happen, it was like, okay, there's got to be a strong number riddle here, because if anything is rigged in the NFL, it's the kicks. So many examples of men who have kicked hundreds of thousands of footballs in their lives being completely shocked by the movement of a football during a game. That's absolutely happening in the NFL. So what I want to mention is how this whole Brett Maher incident is actually connected to Brett Favre, a guy with a very similar name. Favre, Maher. Remember, current Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy was Brett Favre's last head coach in Green Bay, so there's a little bit of a connection there. In Gematria, 4 missed extra points has the same Latin value as Michael John McCarthy. I thought that was pretty interesting, 1399. 4 missed extra points in reduction sums to 101. And there's 11 days between the birthdays of Brett Maher and Mike McCarthy, the current Cowboys coach. Let's bring old Mike up. Of course, Mike McCarthy, the coach in Dallas, where JFK was assassinated. Notice he was born a span of 13 days before the assassination. That's definitely a huge part of why Mike McCarthy is there. This is a guy whose initials are 1313. His name even sums to 13 and 99, which is the ordinal value of 13. I think he even has birth numerology of 103, 11, 10, 63. Anyway, notice how the name Brett Maher has matching values across the board with the name Jesus. This all went down on the 16th day of the year. Jesus equals 61. Brett Maher equals 160. And this is all special because Dallas Cowboys is a match with Jesus Christ in 3 of the 4 base methods. So anytime you see a big figure get crushed on live television like this, pretty good chance there's a riddle connected to Jesus Christ. The name Brett Maher in standard Gematria sums to 641. And check out what prime number this is. The 116th prime number. This game was played on January 16th, or 116. Now, the number 116 connects to Jesus because when you spell out 116, this is the first number that has the same Gematria as Jesus, 985. January 16th also has matching Gematria with Brett Maher, 218. Brett Maher, currently 33 years old, which of course was said to be the age of Jesus at his crucifixion. Crucifixion of Jesus Christ and Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, both yielding a 303 in ordinal. Maher was 57 days after his birthday. That's the Gematria of Mike McCarthy, 57. When you look at how old Brett Maher was in days, we find he was 110 days old. So here we have the digits 1211. And look at his birthday. It's got the same 4 digits, 1121. Numbers of Christ are found in Maher's birth numerology. He missed the kicks on a date with numerology of 40. 1 plus 16 plus 23. Well, the 40th prime number is 173. And on the date of this game, Brett Maher was exactly 1,730 weeks old. The number 173, also important to the crucifixion, as during his time on the cross, Jesus yells for Eli, or my God. But consider how the word Eli is 173 upside down. There also seems to be a John Kennedy riddle in here as well. So if you measure from the JFK assassination in 63, notice how Brett Maher was born on the eve of the assassination date. This means that he was born a span of exactly 26 years after the JFK assassination. The name Brett Maher sums to the 26th triangular number. On top of this, he was also born exactly 20 years and 6 weeks after Brett Favre, who was also connected to Mike McCarthy. Speaking of JFK, Kennedy's full name in Gematria sums to 233. And if you measure from Kennedy's birthday to the date of the game, it was 233 days. 4 missed extra points equals 233. Finally, JFK was shot from the book depository at 411 Elm Street. His assassin was perched at 411 Elm. Notice how the word assassin equals 411. So does the name Brett Maher, 411. Remember who shot John F. Kennedy from 411? It was Lee Oswald. The name Lee Oswald equals 411. And then Lee Harvey Oswald was killed by Jack Leon Ruby. And Jack Leon Ruby equals 1411. Okay, so as I said, there would be a little bit of an intermission here in the middle, and I don't necessarily need a break. I did just want to give a quick shout out to a couple other Gematria channels. A couple channels that I would recommend. So first off, Rambo at the Truth Codes. You guys probably know about him. Regular guest on Zach's weekly TFR show. Definitely, if you're subscribed to my channel, I can't think of any reasons why you shouldn't also be subscribed to Rambo. He does show a lot of Gematria on his channel, but he holds the distinction of focusing a little bit more on the symbolism recurring themes, archetypes, things of that sort. And sounds like Rambo ran into a little snafu with his latest video, so he's going to get some more work out soon. But I talked on the phone with Rambo yesterday for a while. We had a really good conversation. And I'd like to have him on probably sometime in February or March. We're going to do a stream and I think talk about how we got into the studies that we're doing, what we think of numerology, and this matrix we very clearly live in. I thought he's coming from the same place that I am in a lot of this, and I really appreciate that in his style of teaching. So once again, I've called Rambo the standard for Gematria videos, and indeed, his style is a reason that I've paid a little more attention to producing more artistic and clean-cut videos, I suppose you could say. Another channel I like, and as far as I can tell, this is probably the Gematria channel that seems to be getting the most views on YouTube, is Call Me Kinfolk. And I haven't actually talked to this guy yet. I've just commented on a few of his videos. I think he checks out my work, at least from time to time. Sometimes he shares something that I mentioned in a video like a couple days later, so I like to think so anyway, but this is another channel I do enjoy watching. What I really like about his work is that he's very thorough. You know, he doesn't fill his videos with a lot of fluff. It's mostly straight numbers, and it's a lot of the same methods that I use, just basic date numerology, basic date measurements, and, you know, the most common 4, 5, 6 ciphers of Gematria that we all use. So I watch his channel from time to time. Pretty entertaining, good personality, seems like a cool cat. My only gripe with his channel is that he keeps talking about clones. And, you know, look, I'm in no position to say that human cloning isn't happening. It's hard to believe that it wouldn't be at some degree, right? I mean, we know they can clone animals. I'm sure they've tried cloning humans, or have at least looked into it. I guess what I'm not the most thrilled about is how it's applied to certain stories. Like, think about how easy it is for the NFL and the people who run it to fool us, right? Like, all they have to do is throw someone out there in a mask and a hoodie, and we're asking if he's been cloned? I don't know. I guess I don't really understand the theory here, and if someone has more information on human cloning, I would love to see it, but what I can't wrap my head around is why people say that celebrities are getting cloned and replaced. What's the theory here? Either we have an island full of people that are just waiting for their chance to enter the world stage and get plucked out when their real-life counterpart leaves the scene. But, I mean, they can't clone someone and have an instant 24-year-old human being. You know, you can't take their blood and then tomorrow have a 24-year-old who all of a sudden starts aging normally. I just don't understand this, and I don't think it's the greatest look. He did a good video on Dave Chappelle potentially being cloned. I think that one's a lot more interesting. But even that, I think, is a stretch. And look, you know, I'm a skeptic. When I first entered Gematria, it was because I thought it had to be nonsense, or otherwise it would be really important and really powerful. And it really took me one day of studying Gematria that I realized, okay, not only is this relevant, but it's way more powerful than, way more interesting than I ever thought. My point being is that, you know, I'm open to these ideas. I just struggle with what the theory really is there. So, no, I don't mean to call anybody out. Again, his channel is enjoyable. He does good, solid Gematria that, for the most part, I approve. A little different than my channel. Of course, I look at a lot of the astrological elements and stuff, but, you know, props to him. And we set him up with a little membership on the site, so he has access to all the proper tools. So, all right, with that out of the way, let's get back to the numerology after I take some water here. All right. Back to the fun stuff. So, We're going to talk about a few deaths from the past few weeks. And I want to start off with Sal Bando. Now, I'm sure not all of you know about Sal Bando, but I live in Milwaukee, and Sal Bando was a big figure here for a long time. You'll see he finished his career, his last 5 seasons, with the Milwaukee Brewers. After he retired in 1991, he was named the general manager of the Milwaukee Brewers. He was in the role until the year 1999. And this coincides with the managerial career in Milwaukee of Phil Garner. Notice how Phil Garner was the manager of the Brewers from 92 through 99. And he was the only manager to ever serve under Sal Bando. So Sal Bando hired Phil Garner right away in late 91. And then Sal Bando resigned the same day that Phil Garner got fired from the Milwaukee Brewers. So I point this out because Phil Garner's numerology is also heavily connected to this story. First, we start with the number in the headline. We're told that Sal Bando died at the age of 78. Sal Bando was born on 2/13/1944, and when you add those digits as I just said them out loud, you get a sum of 78. And although Sal Bando finished off his career with the Brewers, he was actually better known for his playing time with the Kansas City and Oakland Athletics, where he won 3 World Series championships. And notice how in ordinal, Oakland A's also equals 78. Another guy we're going to talk about in this video is Ted Thompson. And the reason is because Sal Bando used to be the general manager for the Milwaukee Brewers. Ted Thompson used to be the general manager for the Green Bay Packers, another major sports team in the state of Wisconsin. In the year 2021, Ted Thompson died in Atlanta, Texas. This was the same weekend that Hank Aaron died. And Hank Aaron died in Atlanta, Georgia. Hank Aaron began his career and ended his career in the city of Milwaukee. So here we have the death of 2 general managers from Wisconsin, and both of them died on the date January 20th. Ted Thompson in 2021, Sal Bando in 2023. So Sal Bando and Phil Garner were ousted from their roles in Milwaukee in 1999. And the number 1999, of course, has this upside-down 666. On the date he resigned, Sal Bando was exactly 666 lunar phases old. Did I say lunar phases? I meant straight months. From 2/13/44, with the end date, to 8/12 of 1999. Exactly 666 months old. And look at how well the number 666 connects to his name. Bando is 36, and the 36, the triangular, is 666. Bando equals 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. Bando also equals 99. And this is the year that this all went down. 1999. And it was the same day that his manager Garner was fired. Notice how Garner also gives us the number 99. When you write out the number 666, you get matching values with Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, which is where Sal Bando died. Oconomowoc, Wisconsin also has Gematria of 1777. 1777 is the 275th prime number. And when you write out 666, sums to 275, 666. When you measure between the birthdays of Sal Bando and Phil Garner, you get exactly 272 weeks. The number 272 represents the relationship between the diameters of the moon and the earth. Their birthdays are also 2 months, 18 days apart. Remember, we talked about this number earlier, 218, because moon sums to 218 in Hebrew. In ordinal, Salvatore Leonard Bando, his full name equals 218. He died just before the 2023 baseball season. And again, the moon equals 223 in Hebrew. This will be the 54th season of Milwaukee Brewers baseball. And notice how Brewers equals 540, just like the moon, also 540. Phil Garner's final game as the Brewers manager was on August 11th, which is the 223rd day of the year. And this 223 is a big number here. We'll talk about this more. When news of Sal Bando's death broke, it was 23 days before his birthday. And notice how the name Sal Bando equals 23. Measuring from the date that he resigned as the Brewers' general manager to his death was exactly 23 years and 23 weeks. You could kind of say this is two 23s, right? 223. Look at the Milwaukee Brewers, 223. The current owner of the Milwaukee Brewers is Mark L. Attanasio. And notice how his name equals 223. And how much did he pay for the Brewers? Well, look at that, $223 million. How ideal. Milwaukee Brewers general manager Salvatore Leonard Bando sums to 223. Now, I don't like this because it's kind of arbitrary phrasing, but it's the first thing I typed out, and it was 223. His death fell 1,223 weeks after he resigned as the general manager of the Brewers. And look at how general manager equals 322. In fact, Bando was born in a leap year, which means there were 322 days left on his birthday when he died. Or on his birthday. Sometimes I say just extra words. Kind of like an autocomplete for the brain, I guess. But this brings us back to Ted Thompson, who would have been 2,020 weeks and 3 days old when Sal Bando died. Again, Ted Thompson, a former Wisconsin general manager, dying on the same date as this former Wisconsin general manager. When Phil Garner died, my words are going too fast. Let's slow it down. Phil Garner was 73 years old when Sal Bando died. Sal Bando died 730 days after Ted Thompson died. Both Milwaukee Brewers and Packers have Gematria of 73, the two teams that these men were managers of. And when Bando died, Ted Thompson would have been 70 years and 3 days old. Remember the words sacrifice and ritual sacrifice, also 73. The owner of the Brewers also has Latin Gematria of 533. Mark L. Attanasio in Latin. This is another moon number, I guess you could say. Lunar eclipse equals 533. But notice how the name Ted Thompson also sums to 533 in reverse. Well, if you take the 533rd prime number, it's 3847. And look how old Phil Garner was when his former GM died. Exactly 3,847 weeks old. Gotta love those 4-digit finds. So as I mentioned, Hank Aaron died in the state of Georgia, the same weekend that Ted Thompson died in Wisconsin. Wisconsin and Georgia both sum to 44. These states are always linked with this number. Of course, the governors of both states, Tony Evers and Brian Kemp, both equal 44. Remember, the Brewers moved to Atlanta to become the Braves. Or the Braves moved to Atlanta to stay the Braves. The Milwaukee Hawks of the NBA also left to become the Atlanta Hawks. Sal Bando died exactly 44 weeks after the anniversary of his resignation. He was born on the 44th day of the year 44. He died on a date with numerology of 44. His death fell 444 days before the next total eclipse. That next total eclipse over the United States occurs on the 99th day of the year. And notice how 44, this is the only number with reverse gematria of 99. And of course, 44 and 99 bear a similarity and resemblance in how they look. And remember, it was the year 99 when Sal Bando and Phil Garner were boosted from the Brewers. Bando equals 99, Garner equals 99, so does Brewers, 99. Packers also 99 with the capital letters. General manager Sal Bando, 99. The legendary radio announcer of the Milwaukee Brewers is Robert George Euchre, better known as Bob. Notice how Robert George Euchre sums to 99 and 99. His last name Euchre, also 99. All of this connecting to the moon. The moon equals 99. I don't know how many teams do this, but when the Brewers hit a home run at their home ballpark, they call it a moonshot up on the scoreboard. Next up, I'm going to talk about a story from earlier this year for MMA fighter Victoria Lee, who actually passed away at the end of 2022, one day after Christmas. However, news of her suicide did not reach the mainstream media for a couple weeks. It was actually her sister, Angela Lee, who tweeted out about her death. I believe that the announcement was made on January 7th. But what I want to focus on in this decode is how it connects to One Championship, which is the fighting organization that Victoria Lee was part of when she passed away. Notice how One Championship was founded on the date July 14th of 2011. This date would be written as 14/7 in Singapore, where this company is based. Notice how One Fighting Championship, which was its name when it was founded, has Sumerian gematria of 1470, like the date of its founding. This is a Singaporean company. Singaporean equals 714, like this July 14th founding date. And we'll talk about how these are numbers connected to Victoria Lee, whose name also sums to 714 in that same cipher. Measuring from July 14th to the date of Victoria Lee's death on December 26th gives us 165 days. In the standard alphabetic order, One Championship equals 165. Martial arts, also 165. This was the sport that she participated in, mixed martial arts. So Victoria Lee was the sister of another fighter named Angela Lee. And notice how these two sisters were born exactly 410 weeks apart. I mention this number occasionally because the word ritual equals 410. But in this case, what may be more significant is the fact that skull and bones equals 41. And Victoria Lee died exactly 41 weeks before the anniversary of Yale University, where Skull and Bones is located. Measuring from her death to her next birthday on May 17th, Victoria Lee died 20 weeks and 2 days before her birthday. And then, news of her death broke 130 days before her birthday. Well, look at the gematria of Skull and Bones, 202 and 130. Of course, the Skull and Bones number is famously 322, as this is the number we see in the emblem under the skull and crossbones. And in Gematria, skull and crossbones equals 223, the reverse of 322. This year, in the year 2023, Yale University turns 322 years old. News of her death didn't make headlines until the year 2023. And look how old she was when she died. Not only was she 223 months old, but she was also 223 days after her birthday. The number 223 bears great astrological significance, as this is the number of lunations in the Saros cycle, 223, the 48th prime number. Remember, Luna equals 48. Victoria Lee died 48 days after the last total lunar eclipse. So, it was said that Victoria Lee fought out of Tanjong Katong. Perhaps I had some of the, it looks like they changed this. I mean, it used to say Katong, Tanjong Katong. Now it says Katong, Singapore. So I can't say for sure where she was fighting out of, but what it previously said matched up with Skull and Bones, 149 and 202. Notice how Yale University was founded in the year 1701. Well, 1701 is the English gematria of Chatri Sityadong, and this was the founder of One Fighting Championship. I can't believe I even tried to pronounce his last name, but hopefully he's properly offended. Lee died during the time of Capricorn. And Capricorn is the first of two consecutive signs on the zodiac that's ruled by the planet Saturn. News of her death reached the mainstream news on 1/7/23. Notice how Saturn sums to 1723 in square numbers. Saturnalia takes place from December 17th through the 23rd. The planet Saturn has matching gematria with eclipse. In fact, in Hebrew gematria, Saturn matches the English value of total eclipse. Saturn also equals 93, which is the average distance of the Sun from Earth, 93 million miles. Notice how One Championship has gematria of both 93 and 69. Victoria Lee was born in Waipahu, Hawaii, and fought out of Tanjong Katong. Both of these sum to 67. She died exactly 67 weeks before the next total solar eclipse, which equals 67. Eclipse sacrifice is 142, and she died 142 days before her 19th birthday. The 19th prime is 67. The name Victoria Lee is 56, just like Saturn 56. And notice how her name connects to the Hebrew value of Saturn. Let me pull this up real quick. But when you translate Saturn to Hebrew, you get a value of 713 in standard gematria. 713 is 23 times 31 for the prime factorization. If you want to break this down further, you could say that 23 is the 9th prime, while 31 is the 11th. So this number here is the 9th prime times the 11th prime. And the name Victoria Lee equals 119. Furthermore, the name Victoria also 119, so does Singaporean. Saturn 119 with capital letters, so does Luna in reverse. There's a couple more connections here with the eclipse code. One Championship matches total eclipse in Latin. But I want to get to this story about an NFL player who we learned just allegedly died at the young age of 25. Now, this is the type of story that we've been seeing a lot more of recently. And I have no idea what could be causing it. It's crazy. It's as if something was recently introduced into the population that would just start killing people. Isn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? I don't know what that would be. I mean, it baffles me. I know the sun has been shining a little brighter in certain parts of the world. Maybe other parts have a few more clouds than normal, but it just seems like young, healthy people are dying randomly out of nowhere. Huh. So strange. What could it be? Anyway, this was former linebacker Jessie Lemonier. I hope it's not Lemonier. I think Lemonier makes more sense, but at any rate, his last name has Gematria of 239, which is the 52nd prime number. This probably explains why he wore number 52 for the Lions, the only team he played in the NFL for. But it's interesting that he's now dead at the age of 25, the inverse of the number 52. The 25th prime number is 97. Death equals 25 and 97. Jessie was born in the year 97, dead at the age of 25. His last name also has matching values with Detroit, 91 and 44. Lemonier currently played in the USFL, and he was signed to the Birmingham Stallions. Notice how Birmingham Stallions equals 1290 in Sumerian, representing the number 129. He had standard birth numerology of 129, 1 plus 31 plus 97. On top of this, the team name Stallions also equals 31 in reduction. Not only was he born on the 31st day of the year, but he also had reduced birth numerology of 31. The 31st prime number is 127, and when the USFL was founded, he was exactly 1,270 weeks old. The new USFL, just started play last year. But check this out. If you measure from this same date, when the USFL was announced officially, to the date of his death, you get 86 weeks exactly. 86, a term used to off or get rid of someone when you 86. The number 86 has Gematria of 126, and he died on January 26th, or 126. The number 126 has Gematria of 2380. And do you know anyone else who died on the date January 26th? What about Kobe Bryant? Look at his birthday, the 23rd of August, 23/8. Just like the Latin value of 126. The name Kobe Bryant has double Gematria of 113. And when Jessie died, he was 311 months old, syncing up with his birth date, 31/1. But check this out. Kobe Bryant has Gematria of 58 in reverse reduction. This is similar to the Gematria of Jessie Lemonier, 85, the reverse in the same cipher. Jessie was born on a date with a life lesson number of 58, and his birthday falls 5 months and 8 days after Kobe Bryant's. And now we see his death was connected to the USFL, which equals 58. Jessie played for the Stallions, which equals 580. And not only did he play for the Stallions, but he also played in the NFL for the Detroit Lions, which also equals 580. Kobe Bryant's full name also has a lot of overlap with Birmingham Stallions, 243, 428, and 267. I think I'm going to save this Moondog spot decode for another video. This is a deep, deep dive into the Eclipse code and certain Saros series, which I'm not really feeling like getting into right now because I really want to do an instructional video on the Saros cycle, Saros series, the Eclipse code, and how that all works, and this might be a part of it, so I'm going to hold off on that for another time. Instead, I just want to kind of touch on a lot of the questions I've been getting lately as far as what I think about numerology and how all of this stuff is possible. Is it true that there's a cabal sitting somewhere in a room planning things out? And is everything that we see with numerology, is it all attributed to that? Now, I've talked about this before, and my opinions haven't changed much. Basically, the goal of my work is to show people synchronicities that are so deep, so connected to so many other things that eventually you have to basically realize that it's almost impossible and might actually be impossible for humans to do all of this. To me, the best evidence that something greater is going on is the fact that really old people are also dying by the numbers. So often we see the death of a 90-year-old, a 93-year-old, the 96-year-old queen, for instance. The fact that these people are even living to this age so that these riddles can play out for their death, that alone suggests to me that we live in some sort of organic matrix, which is the more or less the buzz term used for that. Now, when I first started studying Gematria, I had no inkling whatsoever that Gematria numerology could be related to our real lives. I had no clue. So it was only like a month before I ever made my first Gematria video where I started making those discoveries. Had I not started making those discoveries, I may not have ever started a YouTube channel in the first place. You know, my work was never meant to undermine anyone else's or to be better than anyone else's, but I was just finding things in my own research that I didn't see anyone else talking about. And I felt strongly enough that there was more to it than what we were being told, that I had to dive in and do this work and talk about it more. So this all traces back to my sister-in-law's father, who passed away in a workplace accident the same date that the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. And his name has ordinal gematria of 108. And remember, the Cubs won after 108 years without a championship. And he was killed in a workplace accident where a giant steel ring broke off and the piece jettisoned out and it killed him instantly. Now, that's another thing that I see so very common in these organic deaths, is that so many people just die instantly. And to me, this speaks to the fact that there's something greater. We have spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them, that are guiding over people in this life, and maybe some more so than others. And I believe strongly that if you're true to yourself, if you spread love and compassion, you don't harm anyone else, that those forces will continue to watch over you. And they will ensure that you don't suffer through a terrible death. And so frequently we see stories about people who were so beloved in their community. I think Jay Briscoe from Ring of Honor in AEW was another example of this, where, you know, people who bring love into the world and make the lives of the people around them better, when they get taken out, they just get pulled out. You know, it's like there's an arm that reaches into the interior of the Matrix and says, all right, your time's up. They pluck them out, and they do so in a fashion that they don't seem to suffer that much. Now, this isn't a universal rule. I'm sure many people know that you've known people who have been sick and suffered. And look, we're in no position to judge why people suffer or how that comes about in our puny little human bodies, right? But to me, it's very clear that this reality, this world we live in, has in it a mechanism that allows for the removal of people from it. And in doing so, there will be synchronicity. These are like mathematical equations that start long before the event happens, that culminate in the event itself. And then as we see, we can look back on these events and find numerical synchronicities just like we do in the media. So many things have happened in my life that I've looked back on and said, oh my God, that's by the numbers. Whereas if I would see it in the media, I would say, oh, it's another ritual, it's fake. And I still do that. I try to remove my opinions as much as possible, but sometimes, you just got to call things for what they are. But again, sometimes I might be wrong because, another perfect example of this is my cousin. Another story I try not to talk about too much, but it's important to understand, for me anyway, watching my videos, to understand how this is all coming about. So my mom is a twin. So she has a twin sister, and they were the only child of my grandmother and my grandfather. And then they have 3 older half-siblings. Anyway, so those two are twins. In 1985, my mom's sister had my cousin Chris, who was born in April of that year, and then 2 months later, I was born. So I grew up with my cousin Chris. We were very close. I also have 3 half-brothers, but they're all like 9 or more years older than me. And we get along great. It's a great family, but, Chris and I had a different type of connection because we were so close in age. When I was 18 years old, Chris had a stroke while at college at Valparaiso. And it was out of nowhere. I mean, this kid was in the best health you could imagine. He was a wrestling state champion in high school. Dated a lot of pretty girls. He was in theater. He was always getting lead roles in plays. He was so good, in fact, that the Wisconsin Lutheran Synod put him as the host of their kids show, where they would send tapes out to all the regional churches and schools. It was like a half-hour or hour-long show, and kids would watch, and he was one of the hosts who would, introduce the segments and tell jokes in between. And he was popular enough that, when he died of his second stroke 3 days later, he got just an absolute outpouring of support. I think like 1,000 or 1,200 people showed up at his funeral. He got letters from all across the country. And it was always something that kind of gnawed at me because I didn't know what happened. And what really bugs me about it is that I didn't go to see him in the hospital before his second stroke. Because at the time, we were only 18 years old. You feel pretty invincible. So one of my biggest regrets is not going in and, seeing him. But looking back, it's just, I felt really weird seeing him in that situation. And it bothered me and it bugged me. And he was cool with it, whatever. But, a couple days later, he was dead. And that, to this day, it still bugs me. But what's so wild about this is that he died on February 25th of 2004, which was the same exact date that the Passion of the Christ came out. And that sounds pretty suspicious, right? You got this popular kid, has a stroke out of nowhere. Turns out he had fibromuscular dysplasia, they said, which has some interesting numbers. So it's very easy. It would be very easy for me to say, oh, something else happened to him. He must have been killed or whatever. And all the numbers are there, trust me. It's not just the release date of that film. It's so much more. But fast forward 11 years after that, when I was working for GE Healthcare down at a warehouse in Oak Creek, we actually moved from one warehouse to another. I managed an exchange parts supply chain. So I had one person working under me that did shipping and receiving in that department. And we got a new employee, and her last name was the same last name as my cousin Chris's. So I asked her if she knew of the family at all. And after she said no, I said, oh, okay, because I had a cousin named Chris who died back in 2004, and she was like, really? I had a brother with the same last name who also died in 2004 in a car crash in Florida. And I was like, huh. I said, yeah, February 25th, 2004. And she stopped and she goes, what? I said, yeah, February 25th. She goes, that's the exact same day my brother died. And the last name's not common, Jagodzinski. It's here and there you see it in spurts, but not a terribly common last name. So what are the odds that I meet this woman later on in life who shares the same last name and also had a brother who died under strange circumstances on the exact same day? That always blew my mind. And to me, that's just another poke from above. Like, hey, don't get carried away down there. Like, the hand of God has this. That was my interpretation anyway. And y'all can think what you want of it. I try not to tell people what to think. I'm just sharing my experiences and my research. And everything on here, heart to God, hand to God, all 100% true. I've never told a lie on this channel, and I never will. That's not what we're doing here. We're exploring reality, exploring the matrix, so to speak, and trying to get as close as we can to the truth. And long before I found Gematria, I found God. That was through Jesus Christ. And I know immediately that bugs some people who watch my channel because they think, oh, you believe that? It's obviously made up nonsense. Well, religion, as we see it through the church, is a lot of made up nonsense. But if God was real and spirituality does help the soul get to a more happy and rounded out place of life, wouldn't you expect the establishment to make religion and God seem ridiculous? So many people I knew grew up in like Catholic school, and to this day they swear off religion. They won't think about God because of what Catholic school did to them. That's the point. That's the point. They're trying to drive people away from God with all this nonsense that's in the church. But there is a Holy Spirit. That's out there. It's real. I felt it. I know it. And anybody else who's watching who's also felt it knows it with their own heart too. So, you see in a lot of my work, especially this Damar Hamlin video, I tried to explain and show people how the numerology of Jesus Christ was coded into that event. And either way, you can look at it from one of two ways. Either this numerology of Jesus somehow continues to manifest itself through this matrix, or you can look at it as this was a ritual carried out with the numbers of Jesus Christ of main focus. Now, if that's the case, if it's the latter, why are they so obsessed with Jesus Christ, right? When it comes to Freemasonry and some of these secret societies, at the core, there's a belief in a higher power. And it's said to be non-secular, but I think when you really look at the roots of everything that's happening, it's all rooted in the story of Jesus Christ, the Savior, and the resurrection. So when I look at it, I see that as evidence that, a lot of people really care about Jesus Christ enough to code those numbers so significantly in the Damar Hamlin incident. Or you can look at it as, well, that's just how the Matrix works. There's a Jesus spirit that's working through and trying to hint us at the numbers. Again, I don't know to what extent which is which, but clearly that's a big part of this. And, everybody who watches and does this work, everyone's on their own path. So I'm not here to preach in any light. I'm not specialized in that. I don't really have an interest in that. I've always felt like I don't like believing in things. I like knowing things. And I believed in God, but I didn't really know God. I didn't know it was there. I liked believing, but it just felt like that. And once I came into Gematria and started realizing, whoa, like my name equals Gematria. My last name literally translates to a count of 10. And here I am teaching base 10 numerology in Gematria. The way I'm synced up with various movies from 1998, which happens to be the same year I did my first little decode in a notebook. It's wild. there's definitely more to it. There's a higher consciousness at play, and we are more or less pawns on this larger board to help affect each other's reality, hopefully in an increasingly positive manner as we go forward. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to say on that for now, I guess. Just wanted to shed a little more light. As far as what's going on in the news and media, I try to reserve judgment as much as possible and treat everything on a case-by-case basis. Because while one story may be completely made up and fake, even to the point where it's like computer generated by AI, something else we see in the media that plays out may be entirely real. So when I look at this car accident that Jay Briscoe was in, you know, he had 2 kids who survived that crash. So it's not like something else happened to him. I mean, maybe I'm out of my element here, but some of these things are definitely just plain happening by the numbers, and that's the reality we live in. When we see people pay tribute to this and carry out rituals by the numbers, it's because they recognize the organic matrix. So maybe that wasn't the best explanation, but it's a live stream. I mean, either way, everything's coded. You know, I can't find any deaths in the mainstream news that aren't. There's always a riddle to be found, and the deeper you dig, the more you'll find. So what does that say about what we're really looking at? Again, I think God's in control of a lot more than many of us gave him credit for. It doesn't mean that means we get to sit back and just watch it all unfold. Again, stay vigilant, stay vocal, stand your ground, stand up for yourself. Those are the most important things because, again, there are forces acting in accordance and behind us when we take action, when we use our voices in particular. So I guess I'll leave it there. I don't have much more to add. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you wish to support the work, please feel free to do so on gematrinator.com. The memberships are the best way to do it. I do have a PayPal for tips as well, but with the membership to the website, you get access to so much more that should make your decoding life a little bit easier. And as we push through the year 2023, we'll continue to add more to the calculator to help make that even simpler. All right, everyone. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.